Most important point, but I think we're going into Spinnaker later, but this is part of that anyway. With like the validation track, like, all right, A/B testing, I'm having the last interview today, if I'm correct. And after that is finishing that up, is doing the synthesizing and blah, blah, blah. But I'm also wondering about what is next. I've been participating in, for example, the scorecard or category maturity scorecard research from Create. And that has been, a very valid option, I think, for progressive delivery. But I would love ideas as to like, hey, what do we want our research roadmap to look like and why? And last time, Orit, you said something around alignment with our North Stars. So I'll leave it open in the discussion and see what others want to come
I don't remember why I wrote that, but I can go with the flow. So first of all, we do have a scorecard coming up. It's been pushed out a few times, but we did want to rebase the maturity level of CD. I'm going to remind everyone why this was important. So we moved from basically choosing our own maturity into actually having users tell us what they think. And we haven't done that for any of the progressive delivery stuff. And CD is currently at complete. And I kind of think that we're not, for several reasons. One of them is the fact that we just started deployment to the cloud, to native cloud, which is like huge and basically a basic operation that's needed today. So I feel like we can't wholeheartedly say that we're complete without, some really basic functionality that's missing over there. So I want to rebase it and like work on that. So first of all, we need to figure out where we are. Then we need to do jobs to be done. And then we need to check that we did better, right? I think that's the flow. And I wanted to start with CD because I think that's the most important one for progressive delivery. I think it's our core business, which brings me to the North Star. So our North Star metric is combined with the release management stage, so a group. So we have one North Star metric, which is now called something MAU, but I can't remember which letter comes before the MAU because I'm very confused about the MAUs. I'm pretty sure it's SMAU because it's stage. And the one that we chose was the number of deployments. So we want to see a constant increase in the number of deployments month after month in order to see that people are adopting the release stage, because deployment comes after CI, after verify. And so if you're deploying, you are definitely using release, okay? So that's the SMAU. And I think what we need to figure out is what's going to make us increase in that more. I think that's really valuable research. And this is a really good topic for now, because now I'm supposed to choose my, I want to say Gmail because I think it's group, but there's another MAU that needs to differentiate. What has progressive delivery contributed to the SMAU? And then that actually goes into the categories. So if someone uses feature flags, they're using progressive delivery. If someone's using review apps, they're using progressive delivery. So out of the 4 categories, we need to choose one metric. That means that people are using our functionality. And so some of them I already have an idea. So for example, review apps is pretty easy. You can just see that you're using a review app in the merge request if it's active. Second one is feature flags. So I have an issue and I can look for it to see if we can count the number of toggles on and off. So there's a number of things that we can choose to count in feature flags, like how many people are adding feature flags or how many people are using the strategy. But I think the one that indicates activity is the toggles. So that's what I want to count. After that, we have advanced deployments. And this is a really good question and one that I asked Kenny because I don't really have a good answer. Advanced deployments is mostly Kubernetes today, and it's mostly inside the Auto DevOps flow. So I'm not sure that if we count that, that counts as continuous, like progressive delivery. Even though we took ownership on auto deploy, I'm not sure it's fair to count that. So that one's like still a question mark. And then we have CD. And we already discussed that CD is huge. Like, what do we count? Is it going to be the extensions to the YAMLs? Is it going to be deploying to the cloud? Like, that's one of the options that I suggested. So engineering has already added a way for us to differentiate how many projects are using one or of two things. One is that new launch type that we introduced. So if you use a GitLab CI YAML template that we provided, or you use Auto DevOps, and you use a launch type that's associated to AWS, like ECS or Fairgate, it will count it and will know that that's your deployment target and that you're using progressive delivery. Or, and this one, I don't know if it's fair to count because this could also be release management, but anyone who has environment variables, AWS types environment variables that we added a few milestones ago, we have this indication and we can tell that someone is using AWS at some point. This doesn't mean anything about if they're actually deploying there. It just means they're using AWS variables. So it's kind of tells you the potential, but it doesn't say the actual. So it's a little bit shaky.
That was a lot. That sounds great. Marcel and Lorie, what are your thoughts on that? Like, does it sound good? Do you have any additional ideas? It seems we have some kind of like things that are the way to go, where our category maturity is up to be done together with our jobs to be done to kind of flow that into the right side. But then it is indeed about figuring out what are leading metrics for us to count down. Like, what are your general thoughts into this?
Well, I know nothing about our competitors, but I would, if I was the one who was supposed to pick one of these, I would look at our competitors and see which is the thing from this list that would differentiate us or put us in the same field. If they're ahead of us, put us with them, and pick that one. And I don't know what that would be, but that's how I would do it.
So that's a good point. Like, let's take Spinnaker, for example. So Spinnaker, they have like so many different features. It's hard to choose, but I think like if we look at specifically the ones that the users were really interested about was like multiple Kubernetes cluster support, multiple cloud support. And we're only at AWS, so we're like really in the beginning of our journey. So I don't know if it's like, I think it's a good idea for an aspiration, but I'm not sure it's the right thing to count.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I know I'm not sure how other groups are deciding which ones to measure to say, like, we can move forward because we did well on this job to be done or this feature. I would assume that's what they're doing, looking at competitive landscape and picking the one, but it might not be. It may be something that they've worked hard on and they feel like it's in a good space and they want to measure it to get data on. I don't know. As far as I know, the product management org was supposed to help define some of that. Like, how do we choose which to test and then say maturity is moved based on the thing that we chose. But I don't know if they ever did.
We're all working on that now together.
Yeah.
And that's all the MAUs. So we were pretty happy with the SMAU that we chose, which is the number of deployments, because I really do think like that differentiates when you use release. But when you go into the individual features, there's just so many. It's really hard to choose, and any one of them is indication, right?
Yeah.
So when I talked to Kenny today, and he sent me this new link, that I have not yet talked to Chase about, so I'm a little bit hesitant that you're going to post this and this is going to be a surprise to him. But apparently, there's a process for engineers. Okay, so Marcel, you know that when we finish a DoD on a feature is when they have documentation added, right? We can't release a feature without documentation. And there's a new suggestion, which we have not committed yet to, but is something that I want to suggest to Chase, is to also add to that DoD the option to add usage ping, which means, you know, some way to measure that people are actually using it. So we made this new functionality. How do we know anyone's actually using it? And that's this new process that I just linked in the agenda. And hopefully I can get Chase on board and we can start measuring everything. Starting with the new stuff, right? Going back to the old stuff will be new issues. But I'm excited about that because I have no idea if everything that we worked on the past few months is actually...
I know the growth team would be very happy with this. Because they're always like, there's no metrics. We need to build them in, like for everything.
It's true. And it's supposed to be a simple process. I assume that the first ones will be, you know, a little bit difficult and will take some time. But as I understand, a lot of the different engineer groups already started this and they feel really comfortable with it. So if we can get to that point, I'll be really happy.
My only, being so new to this is all new to me. My only question is it possible to get a sampling of data first?
Yes.
And then take that data to start making decisions as to which you should focus on or which are kind of reasonable things to check?
So some of the things already have stuff that we can count. So for example, I linked here AWS launch type. And when I started telling the group, hey, I want to measure this, it turned out that there wasn't a way and they needed to add a database value that now we know. It's not visual yet in any dashboard, but at least we have the data, which is like the most important step, I think, because we can ask at any time and we can just look at the value. I would like to monitor over time, but also looking at a value manually, good enough for me at the moment. And when I asked about the AWS variables, that already existed. So I don't really know how you know what is there and what is not. I just keep asking engineers.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I would love to test some assumptions with certain features like, hey, are some users actually going through this path at all? Currently, we don't know.
We can do A/B testing for that, Dimitrie.
It's coming up.
All we know is when it doesn't work, that's when we start to hear about it. When it's working fine and everyone loves it, it's not like people are like, I just wanted to open an issue and let you know that this is great and I'm using it every day. You're not going to hear it.
Actually, Marcel, I have to tell you that working in GitLab, you get instant feedback that you never get in any other company. So when we launched the auto deploy to ECS, I got a bunch of feedback. Like people were like, I followed the guide and it doesn't work, means they tried it, right? I followed it and it's not deploying to Fargate. Hey, we never said it was going to do that, but it means that, you know, there's demand. So there was so much feedback. I was so happy with it that also like merge trains. Merge trains was such a flop when we released it. I had to turn it off like 3 times on .com because it was just such a mess. And you know, it's a great feature now, and we had to turn it off. Not me because it's verified now, but you know, I'm still like in the loop. So we had to turn it off a week ago or 2 weeks ago because there was some kind of Gitly problem. And people were like, no, where's the train? Where did it go? And like, so people get so used to it. It's great feedback, really.
Yeah, when people are trying to use it and aren't able, it shows they're interested. They want it. Like, if they weren't interested, they would just, meh, I'm not going to try it. They're not going to look at that say that's interesting and you know, walk away from it. They definitely want a lot of these. It's just when it does work, when it works perfectly, does exactly what people want. It's rare that people come back and say, perfect, thank you very much. and the metrics, I think, could really give us a bit of a pat on the back, letting us know that something is popular.
Yeah.
Quietly popular.
But it also gives us a great indication. So we did a refactor for feature flags, as you know, and we didn't know if we could refactor. So one of the, before we decided to do the refactoring, we were like, hey, how many projects are actually using feature flags? Like, how many people are going to be affected from this? And granted, we only had the .com information. It was like 70 projects. And we're like, screw them.
I was wondering, because it was released in like 12.5 or 4 or something, and you guys were refactoring it. When I came, I was like, well, that's sudden, but it makes a lot more sense with the new way of doing it. So,
well, to be honest, I also inherited it. I joined in June, and I think the first milestone was user ID or percent roll. I can't remember, or maybe they were in the same one. It was in 12.2. So maybe I was here for a month, and I couldn't do anything that I wanted to plan because just the way that it was designed was. And I guess that
it
also
was
happens.
what it was.
You have a new PM, you know, things change.
I wanted to say something, but it is like escaping my mouth as the moment, and I wanted to speak to it. What was it again? I'll come back to it at a later point. It seems we're in a good spot though, so we're geared at the same thing. Metrics would be super valuable. So I'd say that there's a good spot. So the things that we need to have is we need to build up that initial jobs to be done framework, so we can at least kind of pinpoint, you know, which scenarios we want to focus on for our maturity scorecard grading. When I was speaking with Pedro from Create, he was saying like we had a lot of scenarios for jobs to be done that we wanted to test. And I said, because I was doing some of the interviews for him, I was saying like, hey, you know, I'm doing 11 or 12 or so of them. That's a lot. That's a lot in one session. It takes a full hour to go through all of them. And that is when it goes smoothly. If you don't go smoothly, it will take longer amount of time. And most often the first, like I was lucky that it went pretty smooth for me. It will take an hour 15 minutes. But yeah, you cannot test everything. That's the thing. What I'm trying to say. But what is the time? What is the time frame we are wanting to think of? What is feasible? I'm thinking of like, all right, we need at least a full month for us to kind of get to that job to be done point where we are kind of confident in it. And then we need to set up like the research with like the scenarios. I'm kind of intending of the similar framework as Create is using, as they already done it. Any suggestions?
I actually want to propose a shortcut. So we're working now with marketing on the use cases for CD. I would start with that.
Sorry, a shortcut marketing? Yeah,
so we're working now on mapping out the CD use case. The idea behind that is to be able to sell more, but since we're mapping out the use cases there and the GitLab strong points and all those things, I think let's just piggyback on that and like.
This is a thing you showed me like 2 weeks ago, right? And it is something that I was wanting to ask Lorie about. So do you have a link towards that by any chance, Orit?
Yeah, I do.
So to give you, Lorie, the insight on this, marketing is working on something super similar to.
She can tell us. Dimitrie, she can tell us. She just did the CI one.
Oh, you did. You were working with marketing on this?
Oh, I thought that was what you interviewed me on.
No, Andre and I are working on the CI adoption journey. That's
sorry.
Yep.
So go ahead, Dimitrie.
Anyway, so let me see, because the page has changed a little bit since I first looked at it.
I see what they're doing. So,
what are your thoughts? Because that was
okay. Yeah, so I see what they're doing. They're just trying to come up with the messaging to use in marketing to get people to use the thing. So we can start with use cases, or we can start there, but you want to go back up to a job to be done. And the job to be done has to be solution agnostic. So I'm seeing that these are marketing things, so they want you to use GitLab, but our jobs to be done shouldn't ever mention GitLab. It should be whatever the task is that they're trying to do, the thing they're trying to accomplish. Ultimately, they all want to make their lives easier, but it's like, what part of their job are they trying to do to make their life easier? So you can go up, and then you can still go back to that middle area of the user scenarios and go down to the task level too. So these can be good starting points to do both of those activities. But there's a lot here, and I don't know if I knew that Pedro's sessions were like an hour. I think I would have told him stick with half hour to maybe 45 minutes. Like, you've got way too much there. Like, we can't benchmark everything. We just can't. Nobody's going to sit there for an hour to an hour and a half, 2 hours to let you benchmark everything with our categories. We have to figure out what is the most impactful thing that we want to get the metrics for and do that. And it can't be 10 different scenarios. Those poor users.
it was doable. It was doable.
Yeah. It's a lot though, like, because you're constantly going like this, and I know it can be a lot on somebody.
It was more like the repetitiveness at some point. Like, and what is like? It became so obvious at some point that when they did something good and something bad, because I would either ask the question if they did it, if they successfully completed the task, and ask like, were there any, like, what do you think, 1 to 5, etc. And then can you elaborate on your answer? And then we'd write that down, and then on to the next task. And then when they didn't complete it successfully, it would stay like, you would have that period of pause where it's like eerily empty conversations, like, all right, on to the next task, because that's how we laid out this framework. Like, it is, at least to me, it was super obvious, but hey, I was speaking from the interviewing side, right?
Yeah.
Not that it matters too much, but I found it kind of funny. It's like, all right, after your 11th task, you should kind of get what we're doing now, right?
Right. So it looks like we could use the description column to start asking those how and why questions. Like, how would they do this? You ask the how to go down to the task level, and you ask the why to go back up to the job to be done level. So for like release planning, you should be able to define the planning of the release workflow, blah, 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 blah. Why are they doing that? And you just keep asking yourself why until you get to a level of a job to be done that is workable for you. Because you can keep going all the way to like aspirational. I want to be, the CEO of this company, and that's my aspiration. And I want to do a good job at my job to be able to get, promoted. You don't need to go that far. You just need to go up to the job to be done level for our progressive delivery piece.
How does it sound, Orit?
Okay.
Yeah, I say start a worksheet or something, whatever you guys are comfortable with, Mural, whatever, and just start asking yourself those how and then why questions as well to get some of the tasks out of this too, for the how, and then the why is the job to be done. Do
you have a simple pointer as to when you're at that job to be done level, and like when you're at the right level is what I'm meaning, and also enough of the gaps that you have a complete, like relatively complete picture of the jobs to be done for a certain stage group?
You might go back and forth between tasks. So you might want to start at the task level. What are all the tasks that people need to do with this, like this release planning piece? What are all the tasks? If you go down to say, how are they doing all these things? How are they accomplishing this user story? Then you can go back up and go, okay, why? And then you can look at your job to be done that you've come up with to see how they map to the tasks, because sometimes it's easier to do it that way. Sometimes it's easier to flip it the other way. It just depends on the thing that you're working with and how familiar you are with whichever level it is, and whatever just makes sense for it. But either way, it doesn't hurt to start with the tasks. It doesn't hurt to start, just try to do the jobs to be done first either.
And for the gaps, do you have any tips for that? Because like we are missing out in our product for sure on some, like we are not covering the full range of what our users need, right?
So at this stage, we don't have to test. We should not be testing those gaps because there's nothing to test them with. But you would want to, if we have time, you would want to capture them. Sometimes you don't because you just got the time you have. But if you come across them, I might color code them, or I might say like TBD or not addressed at this time in the product, or planned, whatever, however you want to address them. But I'd set them aside because that's not the focus for the scorecard, because the scorecard should only be focused on stuff that's in the product at the time that we're doing the scorecard process.
All right, pretty clear. I have an existing issue on this. I'll expand that a little bit with this information and see if we can set up a time frame for us to work on this. Q3 seems like a good I would ideally set this up as an OKR for Q3, including the jobs to be done, and either completing or being in the process of finishing up the maturity scorecard for Q3. Does it sound okay to you?
Yeah, it does. I do want to ask a question about A/B testing. So we're kind of finished with solution validation. Is there any problem validation? Is there any next step in terms of research? Like, are we going to pull up some mocks or ideas and start asking them or things like that?
Yes, there is an absolute plan of action, which I completely detailed in the A/B testing research issue. And I can actually point it out directly.
Just while he looks that up, I'm just going to say goodnight to everyone, and I'll check the agenda in the morning. But thanks for letting me join and listen in.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
For being here. A/B testing. So this task list kind of details out. So what is happening? P11, participant 11, I'm interviewing today. Then I'm doing the dovetail tagging. I wanted to do it in between, but I just didn't get to it every time. So I'm going to do it in bulk. Then the insight synthesis, I'm intending to do that collaboratively to some extent and bring in perhaps Lorie, bring in perhaps you, Orit, and anyone else we see fit, but keep it small, not too big. Do some whiteboarding sessions with those insights, and then we start ideating and finding out where we are not sure yet. Then I'm intending to do just a few interviews, 1, 2, maybe 3, but I think 1 or 2 would suffice, and find out those last details we're not sure out. And then we add that to those whiteboard session, figure out the exact features that we want to implement, have those features issues be created, and bam, we are having a big Figma design document where we map out all the different issues into one kind of like holistic view where we kind of design in the context of all the other issues that we're thinking of. And then I'll scope that down into the individual MVC issues, which can then be implemented by engineering. That is the plan of action as I see it be done. And the idea for the dovetail tagging is to be done in I'd say 1.5 weeks. And then we'll have that inside census meeting. So I can schedule that. And then I'd say the rest should kind of be done within 2 weeks from there. That is my kind of time frame with that.
Okay, a stupid question, because I always run to the solution. I know you told me 1,000 times not to do that, but I like it. I like the fact that we're whiteboarding and we have more people on board to give more ideas. So the way that I'm envisioning the whiteboarding is that it's similar to what we did for post-deployment. People will write a bunch of ideas and then we can select what to do. And since the A/B testing is really unique for release in the sense that it introduces a whole new persona, I can pretty much visualize some kind of idea of what the UI will look like. I'm going to leave it up to you, but I have something really ugly in mind. And then my question is, what do we do with the behind the scenes? So A/B testing is heavily reliant on specific metrics that you need to get back in order to make a conscious decision of what you want to do, right? And the metrics could be like what we use here, like usage ping, which I mentioned before, or it could be, different systems like Snowplow, Google Analytics. I don't know, there's something with an egg in its name. There's a bunch of different systems. How do we figure out where we're going to start from in that sense, in the sense of the back end, and not necessarily in how ideas that are conceptually easy to grasp?
Yeah, there are some specific pointers actually in the interviews of suggestions where we should start. If I remember correctly, but I have to look back into the interviews a little bit more on to give the specific answer, but there is the A/B testing implementation part that we can tie it towards GitLab and that we can do A/B testing at all. And then there is the metrics, like that we get the metrics somewhere where we can do something with those metrics. And then it's the metrics reporting. So there's these three kind of areas where we can step in. But I think this is kind of the corner foundation. And then I'd say, to be honest, that the metrics reporting, if you ask me, would be the most important, because ideally users want to be able to see a single metric they have defined somewhere, somehow, where they say, all right, this experiment is either a success or it's a failure. And we don't have to derive and ask data analysts every time to ask hey, what is the status on this? Is this good? Is it bad? Is it going well? Are we having enough users? No, we just want to see if we're successful or not. And we have had a single time discussion with the data analyst. I said, all right, this is the way we're going to derive our success metric. And that has been established. And now that is being configured. And that is the final metric we're gonna show. How that other backend work is going to function, I think that is a huge market we can tap into, but we have some big competitors to run up to. And I think it's going to take quite a while before we have a viable minimal product for us that works in that way. So I think the other two are more feasible and more important, but then, as we are maturing, I think the other thing we can eventually take into account as well.
Okay.
Basically, to round it off, what is the other product that everybody always talks about?
Launch darkly.
Launch darkly, exactly. We want to get to a launch darkly state where you can see an overview of all your experiments running across the company, and you can easily see, all right, these are in progress. Are they going well, and are they a success or in not yet, or are they a failure? That is the MVC of everything you want. And somehow we need to get those metrics inside of GitLab, because that's where we want our users to be, right?
So two things about, I know we're over time, but two things about Launch Darkly, which is really interesting as a base point for this research. One, they just hit 2 trillion feature flags, daily feature flags in their system. Okay, that's one. Number two, we have an opportunity to beat them. And why am I saying that? They have an awesome feature. I can't say anything bad about them. Our feature is non-existent. And yet I'm still saying that we have an opportunity to beat them, and why. It turns out they have a business model where they charge per API request. And I was talking to a customer who has 1 million users. And if you think about daily requests, try to translate the bucks, and you can understand that just from the business model, we have an opportunity to encourage people to transition. So if we have a good enough solution, I think people will move to GitLab, which is a really, really good reason for us to pursue this. On the other hand, we need to figure out what that subset of minimum functionality we need, because we're not going to have feature parity with Launch Darkly. Launch Darkly, that's their business. They do feature flags. They have about 200 developers. We have 2.
the odds, may the odds be ever in your favor, right?
So, we need to be realistic here, but also understand that we have a really good opportunity.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'd say, because we only have so many developers, let's see where we make it effective for them to bring them into the conversation, because they probably have some good things to say and have some good ideas, making us that much more effective in initial stage, getting to that good enough solution, right? Sounds good. I'll give an update in the issue of our conversation of today. I think that is helpful.
Okay.
Is that our outro music?
Hello? עישו, נכון? שולחת לך.
I muted you for your sake.
That was like the Oscars, and we were getting played off. Nope.
Oh, I'm just clicking buttons. Anyway, it seems we're in a good spot. The Spinnaker question is answered as well, I see.
Yeah, it's
Same
fine.
because it was out of office a few days ago. Sorry, no problem. All right, sounds good.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. I just want to make sure you didn't need anything. So it's all good.
No, I had my last exam of my MBA last Friday.
Oh, yay.
How did it go?
I passed.
Oh,
Nice.
congratulations.
Yeah, it was a pass-fail grade.